Hi, Stephen.
Hello, Michelle.
Happy Wednesday. Feuertips 5 today.
I like Wednesdays. Halfway
You
through
like
the
Wed-
week, I like
Hump
Wednesdays
day.
with great weather. Great weather. I look out my window and I see like 100 shades of green this time of year. It's just incredible. Really
Nice.
nice.
Spring seems to have popped up all of a sudden. We went from snow to everything blooming, and yeah, it's great.
That's right. It was a big change in Montreal. Yes. It's been more
hmm
gradual here, I think.
So, Stephen, you've been teasing on Twitter. You're ready to make people work today, I gather.
Yeah, I feel like, I've been having to do all this work on these tips, put together the presentations, talking. I'm just kind of tired of it. So this time I'm going to show them code and I'm going to ask them to tell me what the problem is. But I'm going to
Them
talk about
being
the context of the problem first.
awesome. Them being you, our lovely studio audience. So we're doing something a little different today. We've been doing a Kahoot quiz for the past 4 weeks. Didn't feel we needed to do the quiz today because of the structure of the tip, and you'll be getting us involved throughout the show. But we are sticking to our mission of having someone pick the charitable organization that we are going to be giving money to this week. Last week it was Earthwatch. Shall I share my screen and just remind people quickly what the 3 organizations that we're working with, and get ready, start thinking about who you might want to be the recipient.
One of you will be selecting the winner this week.
Correct. So here we've got Sheldrick Wildlife Trust.
They save elephants and other large mammals in Africa. Amazing organization.
Fantastic. Center for Biological Diversity.
Really critical to stop species extinctions and support Endangered Species Act in the U.S.
And Earthwatch.
50 years combining the work of scientists and citizens to help heal our planet. So we're going to donate to Earthwatch from last week. And this week, we're going to go through a bunch of different pieces of code. You're going to give us your feedback. Michelle's going to keep an eye out for the person who most earns the right to pick that organization this week. So shall we dive in?
Let's dive in. Are you ready to share your screen?
Not yet. I'm just going to talk.
All right.
Then we'll get into some code. So the topic for this week is developers insurance. Now, you probably all have insurance, right? On your car, on your home. The more stuff you have, the more insurance you need. And the basic idea behind insurance is you're not sure what might happen. So you're going to take some action now, which is you're going to give some money to a company so that when something goes wrong later, you'll be covered. They'll make you whole. And I think that there's a form of insurance that we developers tend to take, but it's not exactly paying, to a company, blah, blah, blah. The model of developer insurance is that we're not necessarily exactly sure of how PL SQL is working. So we're going to take a little action now just in case. So that's what you want to look at as you're writing your code. Ask yourself, am I writing some code just in case, just to make sure? And I'm not really sure, because the solution is make sure you know how your code's going to work, how PL SQL works. So what I'd like to do then is share my screen. And then what we're going to do is simply look at a number of different pieces of code, and you're going to tell me what you think the problem might be, which means I do need to move this over here so I can see. And I guess, Michelle, you're going to help me out by letting me know when people respond, any particularly interesting comments that come up.
Sure.
So here's a piece of code that declares a local variable, converts the current date with a D format. If it's 1, that means you're a hard worker. You're working on Sunday. Day number 1 by default at Oracle is Sunday. Then I display the name of that hard worker. So the question is, what kind of developer insurance am I taking on here? What am I doing that I don't really need to do? Any ideas? Hopefully this won't start up too slowly. Oh, come on now. I promised Michelle that we have lots of engagement on my sessions with developers who love to talk about code. Can anybody see what I'm doing here that's not necessary?
If nothing comes in, I might have a guess.
Okay, take a guess.
You're assigning null to your L name variable.
Exactly right. So what I'm saying here is that if it's not Sunday, I just want to display nothing. Only display hard worker if it's Sunday. And to make sure of that, I'm going to assign the value of null to my local variable. This is unnecessary code. By default, Oracle always initializes your local variables to null. It could be a record structure. It could be a collection. It could be a string, a number, a date. It's always by default initialized to null. So you don't have to do it yourself.
Yeah.
And the problem with, you might say to yourself, well, why not? Who cares if I put it there? Because what you're doing is introducing doubt about code and about you. Somebody comes along later and looks at your code and they think, why are they doing that? I'm pretty sure that PL SQL assigns a value of null. Do I not understand PL SQL right? If that person didn't even know that, what about the rest of their code? So it raises questions, and you'd really rather not do that.
So Hayden and Nils had that, by the way. They caught it right away.
Good work, Hayden and Nils. That's certainly the easiest one. So now let's go on to the next one. Grab some code. Okay. I'm going to get all the last names from the employees table, and I'm going to bulk collect them because there are so many employees. I'm going to bulk collect, set a limit of at most 10 to make sure that I don't use too much PGA. And before I do my bulk collect, I'm going to get rid of everything in my collection. What do you think, folks? Can you see anything that's unnecessary here? Okay. Michelle, do you want to take a stab at it while the others are formulating their thoughts?
Quickly, the deleting from the collection is, I'm not sure we need to do that there.
You do not need to do that. In fact, I realize my examples are so stripped down. It's like, well, what could I possibly take out of this blob of code?
There was a bit of the size of the code there, I have to say. Yeah. And Maria and Ludith.
But I got to say, if they type that after you say it, I don't know. Anyway.
So I'm going to trust that they didn't say it after I said it. There's a little bit of a delay between what we see and what they see.
I'm just
kidding. Comment comes in. I know. So
I'm sure that Judith and Maria were not cheating. Yes. So in fact, that's not necessary. When you do a fetch bulk collect, and in fact, whenever you do a fetch, it's going to write over whatever was in there before. So with an LNames collection, if there were 10 rows in it or 6 rows in it previously, as soon as I bulk collect into it, it will either be filled with the next n rows or it will be empty. So let's say the fetch doesn't fetch anything. That will still be set to an empty collection. So you do not need to do that. And again, you could say, well, what's the harm? There's no real harm in terms of performance. It's not going to matter very much. But again, it's reflecting that you're not sure about how the feature works, which brings a lot of other things into doubt. And I saw one other comment from Eric. Is Sunday always day one, or is that dependent on your NLS settings? I have to admit, Eric, I'm sure you can change the day number, the starting day number, but I'm not sure how you do it. So I suppose it must be in NLS settings, and I bet somebody else will tell us how to do it. And let's see, I also see a great comment from Nils, which is, hey, there's no exit in this loop. Oh my gosh, yes, so here's something that's missing. Exit when lnames.count equals 0. Thank you, Nils. Okay.
So this is interesting to me, Stephen. So that, because my initial question is, why does it matter and how is it hurting? So it's the introduction of doubt about what the developer is doing.
Right. Well, in general, you can almost think about this kind of code, unnecessary code, as a variation on dead code. I think we'd all agree that you don't want to have chunks of code in your program that will never possibly be executed. And of course, compile time warnings from PL SQL will help identify those chunks of code. So that stuff is just bad news because it's taking up room. You're looking at code that you might want to test, and then you're trying to figure out why you're not getting any results from that code. So dead code's bad. Unnecessary code is a variation of dead code in that it's running, but it wouldn't. If it didn't run, it wouldn't make any difference. It's ghost code, I guess you could say. Okay. So there's that aspect. And again, it's more like, if I was looking at this code, what this would tell me is that the person who wrote this code doesn't know PL SQL all that well.
Sure.
Now, maybe that's a good thing. That's a good attitude to have about anybody anyway. Like, I'm not sure you know PL SQL all that well. Let's look at the rest of your code. Probably the application will benefit, the developers will benefit from that kind of close analysis. But I don't think in general it would be considered a helpful thing.
By the way, Stephen, Ludith had a comment about the value of D depending on NLS territory.
Okay. So NLS territory is the setting. Okay, great. Okay, let's take a look at another one. So in this case, I've got a cursor And I'm going to open the cursor and fetch through the same thing as before, fetching 10 rows at a time. And then I'm going to iterate through. Obviously, I've never run this code, so I'm just going to take care of this for nils right away. Then I'm going to iterate through the collection and display each name. What am I assuming here or not assuming here, and end up writing my code differently? So in this case, we're not looking at unnecessary code that you can remove, but the way I wrote my code. This is a bit more subtle. And now you can see the head of my dog as he gets up and he gets down. Go ahead, Falcar. Okay, so in this case, no comments, right? So
Not
this
yet,
is
but again, there's that delay, but I'd say carry on, and I'll put them up as they come in.
And what do you think? Do you have any thoughts, Michelle?
Oh, you're putting me on the spot here.
No, you can just say no.
You know, your loop structure, your first to last, is that here we've got some comments coming in.
That's good. This is the issue that I wanted to raise in terms of developer insurance. So from a developer insurance standpoint, what I'm saying is, well, I don't really know how lnames is populated with bulk collect. So I'm going to make sure that I cover all the elements in the collection by going from first to last, which is fairly sensible. But as Judith pointed out in one of her comments, if lnames is empty, then first and last will return null. And this will actually cause a value error exception, a negative 6502 error, which in general you have to guard for. Whenever you're doing a numeric for loop, you want to make sure that your low and high values will never be null. You could do it with NVL, but in this case, what you'd want to do is say, wait a minute, I know something very important about bulk collect. Bulk collect always fills the collection starting at index value 1 up through the count, or it's empty. So what I should be doing, the pattern that I should follow with a bulk collect is this. Go from 1 to the count, always. Always, bulk collect will always do this. There's no way Oracle is going to change this behavior in the future. So this would be the default, the best way to do it. This reflects how bulk collect works. Also, if the collection is empty, then you go from 1 to 0, and it won't do anything. So it also avoids the problems with no values for those starting and ending points. Okay, good work, Judith and Maria. Next up, I've got a cursor. I've got a collection of names, and I've got an index value that I've declared. So I'm going to open my cursor, do the bulk collect, and again, do my looping through the collection. And notice now I've got my 1 to count. So what's the issue here? What's the insurance that I'm taking out? This is probably one of the best known forms of developer insurance in PL SQL. Any thoughts? So I've got the right kind of loop. I'm not deleting from the collection. The issue here, and it's a pretty standard one that we run into now and then, is that I'm declaring the iterator for the for loop. Whether it's a numeric for loop or a cursor for loop, Oracle automatically implicitly declares an iterator of type, in this case, integer. For a record, it would be a record of the correct type. And but I might say, well, I'm going to declare it just in case. Just in case Oracle needs this, here you go. And the real problem with this one is that it so often leads to errors, because then what I'll do is something like this. If index is not null, then, oh, goody, we got something. We do something else, something like that. We got at least 1 row, so we're ready to have some fun. The problem is that this index is this. This index is not this. So this will always be null throughout the entire program. This code will never run. You won't get the behavior you expect. So do not declare the iterators, and then avoid that potential confusion and bug. Looks like Nils picked up on that one.
Yep, and so did Hayden.
Good job. Okay.
You're paying attention, Stephen.
They'll find more mistakes in my codes. I like that. All right. So I'm going to declare a date, just the time. And because I just want the time, I'm going to get the date from my date literal. So just so you know, just as there are Boolean literals, true and false, there are numeric literals, 1, 2, 3, 4, a gazillion of them, approximately an infinite number of numeric literals. You can also create a date literal by using the date keyword and then year, month, day. But I'm going to truncate it to get rid of the time component. What am I doing here that's unnecessary?
Nils is right in there.
I bet. Date literals are always truncated. As you can see, I don't have a time on this. The trunk is entirely unnecessary. And by the way, you might say, well, what if you put the time on? What if I say it's 12, 34, 55, 66? I should have logged in. I'm going to start it now just in case we need it later. But we'll find that you get an error. You cannot specify a timestamp with the date literal, just the date. Let's go and prove that. Run my code. And we see bad format for date, timestamp, interval literal. So just the time. But now you also know that there is such thing as a date literal. I know that in the past, many developers were not aware of that. Okay, next up. Display the first 10, I pass in the name. If the name is null, then I set my local variable to null. Otherwise, I do a substring of it. Then I display the name, but only the first 10 characters of that name. What am I doing here that's unnecessary? So I'd say there are a number of things that I'm doing that is unnecessary, like setting LName to null because the default value will be null. And I've got Eric is suggesting use a default for pname. Interesting. What do you think the default should be, Eric, while I keep talking through this? But here's what I wanted to point out in terms of unnecessariness and developer insurance. For most character functions, in fact, for most functions in PL/SQL, when one of the parameters is null, it returns null. So in this case, all of this is unnecessary. I just say, give me the first 10 characters and display it, or even better yet, just display the first 10 characters. And I don't even need a local variable, right? So you don't have to worry about putting these kinds of guards, gatekeepers around your calls to functions like substring and intstring and so on, assuming you want the behavior to be, if any of them are null, return null.
So there have been a lot of responses, by the way. Maria, just evaluate if name not null. Edith.
And Hayden, coalesce. So coalesce is an interesting function. You're probably all familiar with NVL, which basically says, if this is null, return this. Coalesce says, if this is null, look at the next thing. If that's null, look at the next thing. And you can have just a list of different comma delimited values. And it will return the first non-null value. So coalesce is a really nice expansion of NVL. And the other thing to remember about NVL is it always evaluates the second parameter, even if the first parameter is not null. So if you have an expensive function that's being called, for the alternative to null, you're always paying the cost of doing that. So I'm not sure if coalesce would work here. Yeah.
The sound of the birds, I have to say, is fantastic, Stephen.
Oh, good. I was wondering if it might be distracting. The then branch with an inverted condition. The then branch. I'm not sure I know what you're saying, Nils. And use the else code only. Good. Okay. So Nils will probably.
A little comment going back to your earlier point, Hemant was saying that people confuse the date literal with the data type in the database, and which can include the time.
Yeah, that's a good point, Hemant. It's the same keyword as the data type for returning a date. Maybe it should have been date underscore literal or something like that, but it's certainly what they chose to do. Okay. And I think I've got 3 more. Show the department total, passing in the department ID, get me the total salary for a given department. If it's null, return 0, and then display the total salary in that department. If I don't find any, then just display 0. What do you think? What's the problem here? What's my insurance? And just remember, in terms of NVL, in case you're thinking the NVL is not needed, with group functions like sum and average and min and max and count, count returns 0 if no rows are found, but all of those others return null. So that's why I need the NVL. And Nils points out, and Judith as well, and Eric, that when you use a group function like sum or listag or et cetera, you're never going to get a no data found. It does not raise no data found. It just returns either a null or a 0, as I just explained. So all of this is unnecessary. And again, extremely misleading, because you start to look at, well, what in my program might raise no data found? Obviously here, only one thing might. But in a real program, you might have multiple possibilities. So you're trying to figure out, why is that there? What is it supposed to be trapping? And also, wait a minute, you don't know that about SQL? What else don't you know about? And let's see, Plum, and you'll always have a value, never go into exception. And Stefan, no data found, not needed. Okay, Stefan is must add a coalesce if no rows. Again, I don't see coalesce as being a really big role here, but I could, of course, right, I could do a coalesce here instead of NVL. And that would give me the same behavior as NVL. In this case, there's really you're not getting any advantage out of coalesce, because evaluating 0 doesn't cost you anything. And I've got to say, I've never gotten to the point of always switching to coalesce instead of NVL. So that's a question for all of you on the call today. Do you see a reason why we shouldn't always use coalesce instead of NVL? While you're thinking about that, also think about this. So now what I'm going to do is alter the table employees. I'm going to execute a DDL statement dynamically with execute immediate, and I'm going to add a column to the table. And here, I'll change this. I made it varchar2 without a value, just to make sure if I ran it, I wouldn't modify my table, because I don't want to, so I'm not going to run it. What are your thoughts? Anything here that's unnecessary, that's developer insurance? That's right, Nils. The commit is not needed. Holder as well. So whenever you execute DDL, you get a commit, actually an implicit commit before and after. So you don't need to do a commit before or after on this. You just do it like this, and it will automatically commit for you. Okay. Now I have just 3 more.
All right. Well, I hope you're watching. I hope you're looking at the time. Let's call it 8 minutes.
Okay. So
I'm watching it anyway.
Well, I can always stop asking people to tell me, and I can just tell them.
No, this is fun. This is great.
So now I'm getting the last names of employees, the department names from departments, and I'm going to order by the name. So the key thing to remember here with union is that union always does ordering for you. If you don't want to do an ordering, then you would do a union all. So whenever you're using the union syntax in SQL, you should ask yourself, do I need to get rid of duplicates? I'm sorry, so union gets rid of duplicates and orders. Union all doesn't get rid of any duplicates. And I have to say, I don't know if union all orders or not. Does union all do a sort, folks? You tell me. But in any case, the order by would not be necessary here with the union. So does union all do a sort? Okay, moving on. Second to last. I'm going to do a whole bunch of stuff. If anything goes wrong, then if the SQL code is greater than 0, I'm going to log the error. What ignorance about PL SQL am I exposing here that I'm covering with developer insurance?
By the way, Eric says union all does not do the sort.
Puppies, shh. Now I'm going to close the window. The dogs are barking. My dogs are upset. Okay, so in this case, the thing to remember is that if you're in an exception section, SQL code is never 0. SQL code is only 0 when you're outside the exception section. So this, for example, this will never be true here, and this will always be true here. So you just say log the error. Last, and I don't know if it's least or not, might be. I've got a cursor, I open it, and for every record in that cursor, I'm going to display the value and then close the cursor when I'm done. This is a bit different from the others in that I think with all the others, the code would run and it would execute some code you don't need there. In this case, my insurance will result in a failure when I try to execute this code. Let's try it. PL SQL cursor already open. So as you probably can readily agree, my cursor for loop is a great construct in PL SQL. It automatically opens, it automatically fetches, it automatically assigns value to the record, declares the record, it automatically closes. So whenever you're using a cursor for loop, you do not open and you do not close. And if I take out the open and try this again, then we'll see invalid cursor because the cursor's already been closed. Okay, that ends my presentation. Can you stop sharing my screen?
I can stop sharing your screen.
Great. So I think that we got a lot of really good answers from folks along the way. Yep. I had a sharp crew on board, just as I had hoped. Thank you so much for doing all those answers.
Yeah, they were paying attention. And now the pressure is on me to choose somebody.
You do that while I just talk to finish things up. So obviously I didn't show you anything that was like really, really hard stuff, right? In general, if you're looking at unnecessary code or making assumptions about PL SQL and even SQL, we're probably not talking about extremely deeply complex code. It's some of the simpler stuff. But again, one of the reasons you want to make sure you know about that and don't write unnecessary code is that what you're writing reflects you, your reputation, your status within the team, about how well you know this technology. So the more you do things that aren't necessary, that disclose an ignorance about how PL SQL works or SQL, the worse it will be for you long run in your career. And of course, it doesn't help your code base. So really, it's a very simple idea. If as you're writing code, you say to yourself, I'm not really sure what this thing will do. Here's what you shouldn't do. Go onto Twitter and ask the Twitterverse or ask me. I sometimes get an email saying, Stephen, what will happen when I do this? I'm like, well, write the code and figure it out yourself. That's all I'm going to do. Now, I often will write the code, figure it out, or remind myself and then reply. But believe me, you will learn much better. You'll remember much better. If the next time you ask yourself, what is this going to do? You write a little sample piece of code and you find out exactly what it's going to do. And then you might actually look in the documentation and find out if that's what it's supposed to do. Those two should match up. Okay, Michelle, do we have a winner?
I mean, winner feels a bit strong, but I'm going to ask Nils because he was so engaged today. So was everybody else, though. Thank you very much. So Nils, if you can pop in the comments who you'd like us to give our donation to this week. We had the Sheldrick Wildlife Trust, Earthwatch, Center for Biological Diversity. Let us know in the comments. If you've gone already, we'll reach you.
We'll just pick one. It doesn't matter that much.
We'll just pick one. And everybody, look, if you're enjoying what we're doing, give us a like, comment, subscribe. Thank you so much we've got a comment. Neil says Earthwatch.
Earthwatch gets another $25 from Amazon.
Yes.
Excellent.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thanks for joining us, everybody. Hopefully that was helpful. And if you have we're going to post a blog post on this very topic as well. So go to the Feuertips page and then some. And if you have some other ideas for developer insurance that I didn't capture, please do add them. And I'll add them to my little file here because I'll probably do this again at some point on some other forum. And then I can offer even more to folks. Take care, everybody. Stay safe. Stay masked. Even if you got your vaccination, stay vaxxed. I'm vaccinated. I got my Johnson & Johnson last week. I'm not concerned about blood clots. Though I'm not saying we shouldn't be concerned in general. Mm-hmm. And hopefully you'll all be vaccinated soon and we'll get back to a new normal that was better than the old normal. Take care, everybody. Happy coding.
Take care. Thanks, everyone. Bye.